Pakistan, already facing political instability and fights, struggling with economic challenges, is now facing terror threat from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, especially after the Friday bomb blast. Now, there have been 33 attacks with 35 security personnel killed since the TTP ended the ceasefire. And now, US and UK governments have issued an advisory, a safety advisory to its citizens in Pakistan. Two more countries are following. Anything that happens in Pakistan is a matter of concern for India too. So is Pakistan going to descend into even greater uncertainty and violence? We debate that next. Let's go across to our guest joining us. Dr. Kamar Cheema is a strategic and political analyst in Pakistan. James Dorsey is adjunct senior fellow at Singapore's S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Dr. Tara Karta is former director, National Security Council Secretariat. Thank you all for your time. James Dorsey, I want to come to you first up. Do you believe that this threat and this escalation of violence by the TTP is indeed a grave danger for Pakistan, that it is not in a position and its security forces are not in a position to truly be able to control and counter?
Well, it's certainly a threat. There's no question about it. And the TTP has obviously proven its capabilities. I think the question is why it's escalating this way. And I think that the reasons for that are to be found in Afghanistan itself.
Mr. Dorsey, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, so what do you think are the reasons behind this escalation now?
I think what we're seeing is, and this is similar to the ban that we recently saw by the Taliban in Afghanistan on female workers of non-governmental organizations, that what we're seeing is that a rise or a strengthening of the position of hardliners within the Taliban, particularly as a result of the fact that now, 18 months after they've taken control, they have not been able to achieve international recognition. And of course, they're facing internal threats, particularly coming from the Islamic State.
How capable do you think the current security system in Pakistan is to counter this threat?
Well, Pakistan has always been able to counter the threat. It's gone through a fair amount of political violence, some of it stemming from problems in Pakistan itself. And ultimately, the TTP is also a product of that. But it's given its relationship with the Taliban and its base in Afghanistan, it's obviously also sensitive to what happens across the border from Pakistan.
Dr. Kamar Cheema, I want to understand from you, there is of course a level of violence escalation that has taken place. A lot of the security officials in Pakistan have been killed in these attacks. But the criticism that's coming in is that instead of focusing on this, the polity in Pakistan is more interested in their own bickering instead of coming together.
Well, I think that is a very valid judgment that Pakistan's political elite is trying to decide that who should be in power rather to look into these national security threats which are rising. One thing. The second most important thing is that for a long the political parties in Pakistan have outsourced these security matters to the military, whereas the military believes that the civilians need to take the ownership of all that. For instance, what happened in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, when we saw that there was a return of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the law enforcement agencies were not taking care of them. Meanwhile, the military was saying, and the politicians say that the military was having negotiations and talks with the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and they were not taking politicians on the board. And the incumbent foreign minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari asked for having a parliamentary oversight over these talks, but unfortunately that oversight couldn't happen. So I think this is that the politicians have outsourced all these security matters to them. One thing. Second, politicians are interested more into their own petty politics. Third, the most important thing is that the mistrust between the political parties and the establishment, particularly when there was a vote of no confidence against Imran Khan, and that was a successful vote of no confidence. So there was a surge of criticism against the military in the country that has basically put everyone on the defensive. But right now there are challenges even in Balochistan, even in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and we have been seeing cars, motorcycles, suicide bombings are on the rise. And this recent threat that has come in Islamabad, where there was a failed attempt of suicide attack. So they were falling some bigger targets. So I think at the end of the day, there needs to be a common consensus. There is a national action plan that was established back in 2014 that how we have to fight the militants. But unfortunately, and let me tell you, some of the militants were released last year by calling them, they have been rehabilitated and they have been de-radicalized. But in reality, no one knows that whether they were rehabilitated or de-radicalized or not.
That brings me to my next question. Let me take that to Dr. Tarakarta. Is this not Pakistan's own doing, Doctor?
I think we've been telling them that for years, Shivani, not just us. It was Hillary Clinton who said when she was VP that, you can't have snakes in your backyard and not expect them to sting you. But somehow Pakistan doesn't seem to get the simple lesson that you simply cannot draw a line and say, okay, these guys are against us, these guys are with us. But having said that, I mean, your question on whether I think it's a fairly serious threat. Because you've got this number of attacks going on. You've got an attack attempted in Islamabad. You had that attack against a counter-terrorism center where 30 people were killed. It is a very serious threat, particularly because I think now the Baloch are also planning to join. That's what that's what the news says. I stand to be corrected. Is that the Baloch also may join the TTP, in which case it will be one long belt of this kind of instability which is going on inside Pakistan, and a military operation at this point. They've already had 5 military operations or something, or 4 or 5, I think, and another one. I mean, I wish them. I don't think this is going to make much difference because fundamentally nobody trusts the military. You cannot have an operation where the population at large doesn't believe what you say, doesn't trust your word.
So, James Dorsey, I'm coming back to you. Given that Pakistan is already facing political instability or infighting, given that it already is in economic doldrums, what do you foresee for Pakistan in the next few months or years to come, given this threat becoming bigger and bigger by the day, threat of a complete terror or civil war-like situation?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm not going to predict several years from now, but what I think is clear is that Pakistan for the foreseeable future is going to be politically unstable. And that clearly is an environment in which opposition groups and particularly those that are prone to violence are going to capitalize on. I think the problem, of course, is something that one of your speakers just pointed out, that the gap in trust between the population and the elite that is in power, that mitigates in some ways in favor of violence, if you wish. So, with other words, the greater the discontent publicly, the greater there's going to be some degree of societal, maybe not endorsement, but certainly societal empathy with those forces that try and change the situation, even if what they want to achieve and the way they do it may not be what a majority of Pakistanis would endorse.
Dr. Tarakarta, final comments in all of this. What can be the worry for India? Because Pakistan has been in instability for quite some time, and whatever happens there can have impact here. And we all knew of the warning signs when the Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan. We could all foretell what could happen in the next few years. Exactly all of that is panning out. Do you think there are some worries for India here? And how will India look at this situation?
See, even though we may blame Pakistan and say, okay, you did this to yourself, but the fact remains that any strengthening of terrorist forces in Pakistan is not good for us. Because these people they are probably looking at tying up with the Islamic State elements, Khorasan in Afghanistan, whom, as you know, we've had several cases of Islamic State recruitment here. So what, a terror attack, a terror group which is just against Pakistan today can turn around and assist another terror group which may be against everybody else. So this is not, it's a very bad thing for the subcontinent as a whole. It's bad for Afghanistan, it's bad for India, it's bad for Pakistan. And well, perhaps it might be bad for other neighbors as well if this kind of thing takes off, this kind of Islamic State resurgence.
Yeah.
So
well, there is more and more territory, unfortunately, that is falling into the hands of exactly those forces in the subcontinent and in our neighborhood, which nobody can control and nobody can really even foretell what they could do to the subcontinent and to the entire world. And that's the greatest worry here. I've run out of time. I do thank our guests for joining us for our final debate. But we're leaving you with some images from the monstrous Arctic storm that has gripped most of the continental US over Christmas holiday, that has left more than 30 people dead. Here are some reports.
An ongoing winter storm has brought freezing temperatures, blizzard conditions, flooding, and power outages to millions of Americans this Christmas. At least 26 people have died from storm-related incidents across the U.S., with the latest fatalities reported in New York.
I don't want to say that this is going to be it, because it would be fallacy for me to say that, because we know there are people who've been stuck in cars for more than 2 days, and there are people in homes that are below freezing now temperatures.
By Sunday morning, more than 55 million people were under wind chill alerts and freeze warnings across the South. In New York City, it was the second coldest Christmas Eve in 150 years, according to the National Weather Service.
This is a war with Mother Nature, and she has been hitting us with everything she has since the late hours of Thursday into Friday, Saturday, and now on Christmas morning. And this will go down in history as the most devastating storm.
Meanwhile, several busloads of migrants were dropped off in Washington, D.C. late Saturday night in front of Vice President Kamala Harris's residence in 18-degree weather. One organization, which has been receiving migrants sent to D.C. since the spring, was prepared for their arrival.
These buses were actually initially intended to go to New York and then shifted to D.C. because of the weather. So for many people, the free ride to get them closer to their final destination is actually a really important service.
Also this Christmas, thousands of Americans are stranded at U.S. airports due to the winter weather. By Sunday morning, more than 1,600 flights had been canceled,